Hi everyone, and welcome to the second part of the passive voice video. In this case, I'm just going to summarize what we learned in the previous one, and we are going to exercise a little bit. If you remember, there were different types of exercises that we could face, and that's exactly what we are going to be practicing throughout this video. This said, let's get the ball rolling. You must remember from the previous video that there was a kind of rule I created that allows us to classify the different verb tenses into simple, continuous, and perfect tenses. And it allows us to understand that each of these different tenses follow a kind of fixed structure. So we can use the verb to be conjugated in its tense plus the past participle for simple tenses, the verb to be conjugated plus being, and then the past participle for continuous tenses, and finally for perfect ones, have conjugated, been, and the past participle. Yet, it is also possible to work with the list or the chart I'm going to present in the following slides. So you choose, it's up to you. In case you feel more comfortable working with the chart, you can for sure do it. I mean, you can also work with this one and just study each of the different tenses by heart. So it's up to you, as I said, and you can choose the best way to deal with the different exercises. This said, let's start practicing. As I was saying, throughout the following slides, I'm going to be presenting different types of exercises that we could find the day of the exam. In this case, this is perhaps one of the most well-known exercises where, the teacher gives us different sentences in its active form and we need to change them into the active. Just at the top of every slide, you're going to see a couple of tips or advices that will help you to deal with each of the different exercises. In this case, you can see that these sentences that I give you are going to change in terms of order. Remember what I explained in the previous video that was about the basics of the passive, that there's a change mainly regarding the object that is fronted and then how the subject is placed at the very end. And apart from that, we must also understand that the verb changes to its passive form. So as I presented with the cheat set, this is something that you need to learn by heart. We need to understand what is the tense of the verb and then adapt it into its passive form. Never forgetting that the passive form gets an extra verb. Recordad que siempre cuando pasaba de la activa a la pasiva, en la pasiva yo siempre tenía un verbo extra, un verbo más, ¿vale? Es una manera pues de recordar, ¿no? Si lo estamos haciendo bien o por el contrario, no. In this case, as I mentioned before, we have an example. They kill elephants for ivory. In this case, we can see that it's typical active sentence because we have a subject that is unknown. We do not really know who they are. And basically, we can see that they perform the action. Ellos son los que matan a los elefantes, ¿vale? Entonces, cuando yo creo la pasiva, lo primero que hago es cambiar el orden de los elementos. So I would place at the beginning the object, okay, that it always follows the verb. El objeto, a pesar de que no entendamos lo que la oración nos quiere decir, siempre va a proceder, ¿vale? Al verbo. Entonces, muchas veces es más fácil sacarlo de esa manera, orientándonos así. Apart from that, we need to adapt the present simple tense into the present simple passive, okay, are killed, y para ello tiraríamos de la chuleta que he explicado anteriormente y en el anterior vídeo, and then the subject is placed at the very end, okay, in this case it's completely optional, in fact I would even omit it, okay, and well, here what you can see is that there is some extra information, such as for ivory. This is quite common, and also if you go to advanced courses, that sentences are long and they include extra elements. These are called just like, complements, ¿vale? En plan, hablaremos de complementos circunstanciales que lo que hacen es darnos información extra. En este caso, don't panic. Lo único que hacemos es que como no es ni un objeto ni nada importante que me pueda afectar lo que es el orden o cualquier cosa de ese estilo, lo que hago es mantenerlo en el mismo lugar y haría un copia y pega. Entonces da igual que la oración sea súper larga, porque lo único que me importa es el objeto, que es el que pondré al principio. Si tengo 3 complementos circunstanciales de lugar, tiempo y modo, por ejemplo, ¿vale? Pues los sigo manteniendo en ese sitio. Haría un copia y pega y no me afecta para nada. Dice, my advice is to stop the video, try to do everything, okay? And once you finish it, we check it together. So, supposing you've already stopped and done the exercise, let's check it. So, people cut down a load of trees every year. This sentence is something like a load of trees are cut down every year, okay? Every year sería mi complemento circunstancial de tiempo e insisto, no lo pongo al principio, no lo pongo en el medio, nada, lo dejo al final de la oración, ya está. Es verdad que podría poner by people, pero es que insisto, si os fijáis, la mayoría de los sujetos no son importantes, es que no me traen a la cabeza ningún tipo de persona en concreto. ¿Quién son they? ¿Quién son people? ¿Quién son someone? No lo sé. Entonces es mejor que ni siquiera lo meta. O sea, no hace falta que lo pongáis entre paréntesis ni nada por el estilo, porque es que es muy obvio, es que no los conozco, ¿vale? Así que prefiero utilizar una pasiva y deshacerme de ellos. Then the government will introduce new measures against crime. New measures about the crime will be introduced. She offered me a cup of tea. A cup of tea was offered to me. Okay, or in this case, you could also say I was offered a cup of tea. We'll talk about that in later videos. Someone has stolen Michael's bike. Michael's bike has been stolen. Okay. Someone should help the old woman. The old woman should be helped with a modal verb. They are building the bridge at the moment. The bridge is being built at the moment. Someone has broken into Anne's house. Anne's house has been broken into. Scientists might discover a new cure for cancer. A new cure for cancer might be discovered. Bad weather may delay your flight. Your flight may be delayed by bad weather. You can say here. Perhaps it makes more sense. The president will give a speech next Monday. A speech will be given next Monday. In this case, you could say perhaps by the president, because, I mean, a precise person comes to your mind, like the president, okay? Only in those cases, we would insert the subject. And this said, let's keep on practicing with some extra exercises. So, 15 extra sentences where you need to do the same as what we've done in the previous one. Stop, do it, and then we check it. Once again, remember that the sentence changes and that we must pay attention to the verb change, yeah? Remember that, well, as you can see in the first one, someone will attend you later, you will be attended later. In this case, it's true that we don't have this typical direct object, no tenemos este objeto directo súper común que suele ser como una cosa, sino lo que tenemos más bien es un pronombre. Bueno, pues cojo ese pronombre y lo pongo delante. There's no problem. As we'll keep on seeing throughout the rest of the videos, sometimes we do not only have a direct object, but it's also possible to find an indirect one that in the majority of the cases it's as well a pronoun, and there's no problem. As I mentioned as well at the beginning, sometimes we have this kind of complemento circunstancial, as later is. In English, they are called adjuncts because they insert or they add extra information. Okay, but well, let's move to the second one. I don't remember Jack giving me the tickets. I don't remember being given the tickets, okay, for instance, that's a more complex one. You must do something before the situation gets out of control. Something must be done before the situation gets out of control. Then you can hear the music in all sections of the stadium. The music can be heard in all sections of the stadium. The company employs 5 people. 5 people are employed by the company. They are going to buy a new TV set next week. A new TV set is going to be bought next week. Okay, remember that these kind of super big structures, we mustn't forget any of the different elements, okay, and more precisely the past participle. Se suele olvidar un montón, no sé por qué, como que vuestra mente ya explota cuando tenéis que poner el past participle. Be careful with that, okay? And well, here you can just see the rest of them. Okay, so these are somehow complex sentences, ¿vale? Son oraciones un poco más complejas, pero si os fijáis, they keep on having the same structures, the same, the same requirements, and they follow the same issues, okay? The only thing is that they are perhaps a bit more complex, okay? But it's always the same thing. So let's move to a different exercise. This is perhaps one of the most complex ones. Because we need to do a couple of things, as you can see at the top. First of all, we need to decide if the sentence is active or is a passive sentence. And once we have already decided that, we need to go to our cheat set and rewrite the verb in its form, okay, in its accurate form. If it's active, in its active form, and if it's passive, following what I explained in the cheat set. So how can we distinguish if we are in front of an active or a passive sentence? Well, basically because remember that in the active sentences, we must have an agent that performs the action, okay? Whereas in the passive sentence, perhaps we are lucky and we have something like by. For instance, in sentence 11, you have by his assistance, okay? So in that case, for sure it's going to be a passive. But if we don't have it, we need to look for a different or weird structure where what appears as the subject is not really an agent, but more precisely the object of the active. This said, this is something that with practice you will understand much better. But anyways, let's try to stop the video, try to do it on your own, and then we check it together. Supposing you've already done it, let me go fast and check it. A load of old songs were played on the radio last week. ¿Qué hacemos en este caso? Entendemos que a load of old songs no es una persona que pueda realizar una acción, sino es más bien el sujeto, ese sujeto es el objeto de una activa, ¿vale? Entonces está puesto al principio porque queremos crear una pasiva. Con lo cual decido que es una pasiva y en este caso utilizo la pasiva en pasado simple porque tengo last week, con lo cual vuelvo otra vez a esas pistas que siempre hemos visto al explicar los diferentes tiempos verbales. Como last week siempre iba con el pasado simple y tengo una pasiva, pues pasado simple de la pasiva, just that. And that's what I need to do with the rest of the sentences. So these kind of clues, okay, that we learned, or these signal words that we learned with the verb tenses are going to be extremely useful here. Then the president has just been informed about the cup in Central America. Here as well a kind of object, also a passive. If I were you, a simple active sentence. I wouldn't go to the meeting, not only simple, but it's also a second conditional. The bank manager told me that the house hasn't been paid for, no ha sido pagada, no se ha pagado, que es como diríamos en español esa pasiva impersonal. Margie is very happy because he has just received. Aquí tenemos a Margie, que es la que ha recibido, ella es la agente de la oración. Vais a ver que en azulito he puesto las que son en activa y en rosa las que son en pasiva. Then, I was looking after the children while the garage was being repaired by someone. Eso es otro truco para saber también que nos encontramos ante una oración pasiva que me permite introducir un by y una persona. When Jane came to the office, she found out that her boss had already left. A normal active sentence. Please don't interrupt us. We are having an important conversation and we are the agent. I reported to the police that my stamp collection had been stolen the week before. Había sido robada by a thief, by a robber. You know, I don't insert it because it's too obvious. And also because we don't usually know who steals our things, you know. A short time after the pedestrian had been hit by the car, the ambulance arrived, okay? When Mr. Cannon entered the room, emails were being typed by his assistant, you know? But sentences are not going to be as clear as that one. No siempre nos va a aparecer ese by, que nos salve un poco la vida, ¿vale? Pero recordad que en todas las pasivas, en todas las rositas, al final de la oración vais a poder meter by someone, quedándome bien, ¿vale? Si yo, por ejemplo, that has not smoked for over 3 weeks. Si, por ejemplo, en esa yo digo by me o by someone, doesn't make sense, porque ya es activa. He normally wakes up on his own, but yesterday he was woken up by his mother. They usually don't allow visitors at the hospital. And this is it. Let us keep on practicing with one exercise where we only need to complete with passive verbs. Great. So this is a quite common exercise. It is the common gut feel exercise. In this one, sentences are already organized into its passive form. Las oraciones ya están ordenadas en su forma pasiva. No voy a tener que hacerlo yo. But in this case, the only thing that I need to do is to look for a clue that could tell me what verb tends to include. ¿Vale? Tengo que buscar esa pista de presente, de pasado, de perfecto, lo que sea, que me diga qué tiempo de pasiva voy a tener que meter, ya que recordad que los tiempos de pasiva mantienen el mismo nombre, lo que pasa que ahora se apellidan, o su segundo apellido es presente perfecto pasiva, ya está, ¿vale? Entonces se sigue manteniendo las mismas reglas y absolutamente todo igual. This said, pay attention to the different sentences where you only find passive sentences, try to complete all of them and then we check them. So, this said, the first one, well, it's quite simple. Romeo and Juliet was written by Shakespeare, understanding that Romeo and Juliet is a book, ¿vale? Entendiéndolo como un libro, no como dos personas. It's a kind of past, simple, passive, because it was written in the past and Shakespeare has already passed away. The books have not been published yet. In this case, we have yet. So we are talking about the present perfect, in this case in the past. As soon as I got home, I realized that my wallet had been stolen because the action happened before the other past, ¿vale? Esta acción ocurrió antes que el propio pasado. Dinner is served between 5 and 10 p.m. every day. I have every day, so a present simple. No letters have been delivered since, ese since, recuerda que siempre va con presente perfecto, pues ahora igual, pero de la pasiva. Since the start of the strike. Then the building was being torn down when we got there, ¿vale? Se estaba destruyendo cuando llegamos ahí. Progress in many fields of science has been made, okay, in the last decades. Then since last week, 5 of the 7 terrorists have been caught. Lo mismo, tenemos el since, seguimos con las mismas reglas, ¿vale? Por eso necesitamos esa base que esté bien marcada, ¿vale? Esa buena base de los tiempos verbales, porque si no, todo lo demás es que es imposible construir si no tenemos eso. Taxes will be increased by the new government next month. Hablamos de un futuro, pues un futuro en la pasiva, ya está. Then the classroom will be redecorated next week, once again. The church was designed by a famous architect in the 18th century. Then the tunnel is being repaired at the moment. Okay, so once again, that's what we have. And then the application must be sent by Friday. Remember that we can also insert modal verbs in its passive form. So this is the end of the video. Just after watching it, you must be able to adapt active tenses into passive. Remember that I have somehow recalled what we learned, this kind of cheat set with the different verb tenses. But above all, what we've been learning throughout this presentation was to complete different types of exercises on the passive voice. And talking about exercises, then let me tell you that you can find extra practice in the description of this video. In case you still have doubts, you need more practice, remember that you'll always find me via email, okay? I'll always be there answering all your doubts. And well, this said, have a lovely and wonderful day.